Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions. Good to see you here with us. Yeah, there are a lot of explosions today. I don't know if they're coming through. Those are some kind of celebratory. Does anyone remember what those things are for? I think they're a wake-up call.
Every day.
They're a wake-up call from God. Time to wake up and see who you are. But it is some kind of something like that. They have some kind of holy significance here. And for those of us looking at denials of divinity, if we feel any irritation, we can see that we desired it. So, and we can look with Jesus and for an opportunity to see all of our desires right in front of us, which is the path of light, actually, the path of God, honesty of God, to see that we're the light, admit it. Okay, Jesus, you're right. I'm the light, and show me all the denials and all the denials that infinite happiness isn't here right now. And the only thing that's stopping me is the me. Is the investment, is the me. That there's someone out there who could stop joy. All the joy stoppers in the world. And so we're looking at all the joy stoppers, and it's just such a great reminder. We were looking at the book where it is going to become a book. I don't know if you were on when I mentioned that before, Janet. And so we're going through it again. It's really quite. There are very few edits, like not really, no sentence rearrangement. There's just, some capitalizations, and Jesus has his way of putting dashes in. I'm not even sure I can punctuate. So like, I look at some of the sentences, like, I don't know. Okay, where do you want, just go, where do you want a period here? And then, it's just so much easier just for everything, to see if there's any attachment to any idea I have about anything, which this place has been very excellent for, I have to say. The monastery, but a lot of miracles, a lot of just amazing things happening. So we'll just look at the light as the light, the divine being. Supreme happiness is on the mind. What a nice thing to be on the mind rather than all those other things. Try to stack in there, fit as much noise in there as possible to deny divinity. So yeah, Janet, you'll have to just let us know if the explosions are difficult for you to hear. You're okay? Good. We'll just turn them into explosions in the heart and celebration of God. So we've been going back through a story, which is that chapter 12, I think, in the storyline, how the story is the denial and how we love stories, and then how the Spirit's actually using stories to unwind us from the idea of a story by watching movies. We've been watching movies a lot lately, and to look at the movies as the light. And look, as we watch the movies, where the denials, where is divinity being denied and delayed? The direct experience of light and joy. And we had talked about this before, I think last time we did the story chapter about the story of desire to have an experience waking up. And Jesus does, in the Course in Miracles, talk about steps and stepping stones. And then I forget what chapter it is. I think it's chapter 3, maybe. He's just saying there are no steps. see that there aren't steps, because then we can get obsessed with steps. And we can see in the light of divine being, are there any steps to recognizing divine being? Infinite lights here in our direct experience. Can we find a step that there's required for the recognition of light? So we're actually in consciousness. Consciousness has created steps for waking up. Because the light doesn't need any steps to see what it is. None whatsoever. So it's actually a storyline about steps. The steps of waking up, the steps of another thing I have to do in order to wake up and see who I am. I have to win my way to God. And then we just look in the light. Is there any winning our way to God? Does the light care if we are falling down on our knees and banging our head on the floor or anything that's happening? I mean, really, does the light actually see that? It's not like it's dispassionate. It just doesn't, it doesn't say, look, I agree with you. You're really weak and little. Does the light say, look, I agree with you. You're really weak and little? The light doesn't say anything like that. And so this kind of a reacclimation to just recognize light is not where the fear is. The fear is in the miscreation of a story that the light does not exist and that the light will vanquish, that the light is actually a destructive force. The Old Testament, the story of the Old Testament is the belief that the light is a destructive force. God will punish you. The God of sacrifice, you have to kill a lamb to win over God. And yet we see in the light, does the light require sacrifice to know itself? That's why a New Testament, a new way of looking with the Christ mind, as the Christ mind, love your brother as yourself. The path, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus says in a new covenant, I am the way, the truth, and the life, because you are the way, the truth, the life. In truth, in the light of divine being, are we the way, the truth, and the life? And hear the answer. We've called ourselves out of a dream of a personal light, a dream of separation from our Creator. It's our own light calling us, the own light within going, don't play anymore in this game. And this is the story of falling asleep. I fell asleep. The story of the one who searches to awake is the one who searches in the storyline. Ask in the light of divine being is the one who's searching in a story, in the dream still. But it's helpful because it's seeing, there's a seeing within consciousness that the fragmentation of consciousness, the unhappiness and the suffering, that story doesn't work so well. So then the inward journey story starts. The story of the one who turns inward, but then that one becomes spiritually important, more significant than anything else. We were laughing about that. It's just what's happening. It's still innocence. It's not for us to judge what it looks like in form for anyone else, just for us to see, okay, there's a desire for specialness even in the spiritual journey. Anything other than perfect peace is specialness. Jesus, the lesson today was about cruelty. What cruelty? And seeing that love is not cruel. Is the light cruel? And it was so striking to hear Jesus talking about the slightest denial of divinity is cruelty to yourself. And how we take those things for granted. Cruelty, self-cruelty. It's the storyline of an experience of wanting to have an experience of cruelty and seemingly have it out in the world while we deny ourselves and are cruel, really cruel. I see that cruelty. Without anything happen, of course, in innocence. But until we really see it, that made up part of the storyline for cruelty, the made up story of unhappiness, that we're generating that, the made up story of something related to this world that it's taken for granted, anxiety. That was the story here, but I just didn't see it. We're all afraid of ourselves, as Jesus says in a course. Yet the moving expresses within you, without changing your true identity in truth, in the light of honesty of God. Is there truly anything to be afraid of the divine light that's here? When we look, can we find, is this light that's here, can we find anything to be afraid of? As soon as we see that we're light, does lightning strike? That's really the belief system, the ego. The belief system ego is that as soon as we see the light, God is going to strike us dead. And Jesus is saying, I can hear it. Do not underestimate that belief system in the subconscious mind. That seeing the light, because that's the whole ego's plan. The whole ego's game is to convince ourselves that God will kill us for creating the world. That's why this honesty of God is looking as the light of everything. We can see there's nothing to be afraid of. Absolutely not a darn thing. Fear is self-generated cruelty. That's direct. Thanks, Jesus. Self-generated cruelty. I'm being cruel to myself. I'm deciding to be cruel to myself. Wow, that's deep. Carrying around a big heavy load of cruelty. Yet does the light require cruelty for anything? The infinite light of being. So we can just take that whole desire for experience of cruelty, that big old sack of rocks, and just gently lay it in the light of divine being, and let the divine being just lay that whole thing for cruelty and the light, and just see what happens to it. And see if it can actually, where is it? The meanest, most hateful thing we've ever thought that we did, ever. Meanest, ripping, hateful thing, and just put that right in the light and see what happens, how the light handles it. How the light handles any story that we can possibly auto-generate. Okay, so let's try the one where anytime, at any place, in any century, any lifetime, the most cruel thing that we have thought that anyone has ever done to one of us, the meanest, evil eyes, whatever it was, and then we just place that whole thing in the light of divine being and see what happens to it. It's like Jesus would say, back the truck up, get up. And see, does the light, what the light does with it. Where is it? In the light of divine being. It's only when we withhold it, because then we're withholding it from ourselves, from our direct seeing as the light of being. That's the correction. That's all a correction is, looking, oh, wait a minute, where'd that go? It's gone. That memory of my dad, when I'd come out and I thought, oh, my dad's got a little stinger. He'd find something, you know, that self-generated picture in consciousness, you know, it's like, God, is he here to torture me or something? You know, I can't even feel it anymore. It's like, I can see that that was a decision in mind. And the funny thing now I see, it was such a great training thing because I can see how it keeps coming up in consciousness. The way we're so conditioned to deal with it, if somebody upsets us, and I could see it because I did it when I left community, like Living Miracles. I didn't want to see any picture of any of those people. You know, and I can see it, and you start seeing the reflections in the world and go, oh yeah, right, I did that. Exactly. I'm going to leave community. I'm going to cut them off from Facebook. I didn't do that, but you know, cut off their instant messenger, cut them off. I don't want to see it. But the thing about it is, it had to be seen through. It kept coming up and why is this still coming? I thought I left those people, because it has to be looked at. It has to be seen through. It's not true. And so it will reappear. And that's why the same story seems to come up again. Why am I experiencing so much anger? Because there's a desire for it. And so it comes, the desire brings like this. It's like, it reminds me, we were talking about that woman that talks to animals. She's really amazing. I love that, Diablo. And she went in this place and she talked to, they had this really cranky panther, black panther, this gorgeous animal. And he was just really mean. They adopted him. You know, story. Here's the storyline. But it's a helpful storyline. It's a good unwinding storyline because it's really, things are not as they appear. So the guy called this animal worker in, and so she comes in and she can talk to animals. And he didn't believe a word of it. It's like that but he's like, all right, I'll do it, whatever, have her come in. So she talked to Diablo, which means I think evil one or something, or right? Isn't that
I thought it was
devil, Diablo. And he told her he did not like his name. He did not like being called Diablo and a whole host of other things, which she told the owner, which he thought was all but then he actually tried it and started talking to Diablo and changed his name to Spirit. This is worth finding. Search that one out. It's so good. Maybe we'll play it, a miracle moment, and play it. It's so good. Okay, so, and then he's bawling, of course. The guy's on the floor with this, right? Because he loves animals, his whole spirit's with animals. And now I talk to all my animals and ask them what they want. You know, it's all about communication, however that's taught by the spirit. So then they were having a lot of shark attacks. I don't know where that was. Maybe you remember Anya, but they're having all these shark attacks. And so they asked her about the sharks. So she talked to the sharks. And the shark said, basically, fear brings us in, makes us curious. It's very attractive to us. Oh my goodness. If that isn't a little thing in consciousness, a little clue in consciousness about fear. Fear brings us in. Something like that one. Something like that. Fear, attractive.
We investigate it.
We investigate
it. And then we go to investigate. We're not out to kill.
Yeah.
We just investigate.
We're calling in attack. We're calling in the attack to appear in consciousness. We're calling the story line. I want this story. This one who dies, the one who whatever. And therefore, we got to really look at that storyline carefully, very carefully, and how happy we really are without a storyline. In every instance where you ask me, I will tell you what is most helpful for healing the mind. Oh my gosh. To have that voice so available to help us is just, how can we even speak about it? To show us every way where that infinite happiness is become a story that we can't have it when it's a story that we don't want it. Remember, this need not be thoughts, feelings, and emotions because you made them, and thus you can see they are not true. You have merely to notice when you are not at peace and ask with willingness to be shown, which is it's Course in Miracles. It's just, he's saying, as the light, you are the light of divine nature. See that you're this first. Ask me to show you the desire for the story. Where's the storyline? Where is the story that I am not healed, whole, and complete, infinite, unchanging happiness, ridiculous levels of happiness, beyond happiness? Where is that? And then let's see that together in the light. You have merely to notice when you're asked the willingness to be shown. Do not underestimate your power as an infinite being to immediately focus on the light of truth to accept the correction. Accepting the correction, just merely seeing this need not be. This isn't true. That's it. That's what forgiveness, all forgiveness is seeing it in the light of divine being that it ain't so. That's it. Admitting that we're not at peace and seeing that it's impossible. In the light of divine being, is it possible not to be at peace in the light of divine being in our direct experience? And to ultimately see that no correction is necessary in the light as light beings, the only thing we share, infinite light, is a correction necessary for the light. As a light being, there is no correction. The correction's merely pointing to the decision not to experience the light the full time. Since you're focused on what never happened, the story, the moving, ultimately you must see that this focus of functioning within consciousness, so consciousness, and we can see this all the time, just observing how the mind works. That's why the mind training is so valuable, because we start to observe when we're going like this, honing in, total infinite diversity everywhere, infinite trees, bushes, flowers, the glory and the display of consciousness, the glory of it. And the mind's going to go ding, 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 heading, coming in. It's going to find that speck of dust that's horrific to focus on. Now, one reason why the diversity and the splendor of consciousness sucks. The story of the speck of dust that is ruining my day. It's true. We see it. We've all done it. So we know how that works. Ding, 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 down into a person like this. The dive into the shoe. We talked about putting our foot and jamming our whole infinite self down into a baby shoe. That's what that infinite light, ding, 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 into a shoe and going, I just don't understand why that hurts. Why does that hurt so much? Because it's not natural. Is pain natural to us in the light of divine beings? So now we can just watch the ding, 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 and say, Jesus, will you remind me when I'm ding, 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 ding? And he does come in and say, you're ding, ding. And we're going, why does this hurt? Why does this hurt? And Jesus is going, step out of the shoe. That's all he's saying. Step out of the shoe. You're not a shoe. You're not a big foot in a little shoe. And we're going, no, but Jesus, I've got to get this shoe on my foot. I've got to. I got to have an argument with yourself. And that's what kids do. You watch your nieces, nephew, children. No, I'm going to get this shoe on. I don't care if it's backwards. That's what we're doing to God every day. like, no. Oh, your focus is on what never happened, the moving. Ultimately, you see that this focus of functioning with consciousness. So he's turning that function that goes ding, 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 like this. And he's turning it. He's going, look this way, not out there, but look back to see what's here. So it's a functioning ding, ding, ding down to a little hard object, to the little shoe, stuffing ourselves in a shoe, unhappiness. He's saying it's a mechanism to maintain personal identity. That's how personal identity is maintained, through the focus effect in consciousness, to focus on and just create an object outside and project it out. By turning the focus toward your divine nature, the light within, the unmoving, a helpful step within consciousness and the recognition of divine nature, you will ultimately see that even focus does not exist. And we can know that now. In the light of divine being, does focus exist at all? Is the divine light focusing on anything? Looking around, I'm going to see if I can focus as a function in consciousness. But it's a helpful one to break the cycle of going out to project, to turn back in and go, okay, wait, what's true? What's really true? Love has no thoughts, feelings, or emotions. Your true nature, love is infinite light. I just hear Jesus, just take your foot out of that shoe. Just take it out. You're going to be so happy. No, Jesus, every but Jesus comes out. All that's what following spirit is. That's why following spirit is so valuable. It's helping us, the child who is insisting that it can get its foot in that shoe, and it's going to be really happy wearing that shoe all day. And it's insisting that it has to put that foot in that shoe. And he's just, all spirit does is, it's just an invitation. It's just an invitation not to do that. just stands there going, but is the light insisting that we don't stuff? It doesn't beat you up for putting your foot in the shoe and stuffing yourself into an objective body. It doesn't, the light just goes, there's spaciousness within the light, infinite, the absolute reality for pretend reality. But the absolute reality, the light is not going, look, it's not agreeing with us, with it's true. It's the light agreeing with consciousness, that consciousness is true in our direct experience. It's the light going, I agree with you. That is really true, that you can stuff yourself in a shoe. The light just kind of, okay, the light invites. Is the light soliciting us to know who we are? And we can listen to that answer. Is the light soliciting us to be who we are? Always. It's not encouraging us to go out there and stuff our foot in a shoe. It's soliciting us to come home. Look, see that's not working anymore. It doesn't work. That's a story that you can do that. That's a story. So every story, I'm asking Jesus, that he's just as continually saying to me, was this most helpful here, always ask me, is this most helpful? Because we can get really, the ego can be very obsessive about waking up, even about putting thoughts in the light. So it's just really asking, okay, what's most helpful now? Is what I'm right here, is this most helpful? Sometimes he says, no, it's not helpful. Only the light knows what's most helpful for us. We've forgotten what's most helpful. It is not automatic given that emotions must be experienced. This is just such a valuable In the light of divine being, must emotions be experienced? To see divine nature, do we have to experience emotions? We don't have to. We don't have to do anything. The only place where they're helpful is to see that they're a denial of divinity. As the mind becomes trained, at first you don't see it. You're crying your eyes out because you think you did something bad. But let's just say, and it's not, Jesus doesn't judge crying. He's saying we don't judge anything. Don't judge anything in form. The last thing we want to do is cry and go, oh, now I'm. It's not like that. He's just trying to say, he's not making anything wrong. He's just saying, okay, here's what's most helpful. As the mind becomes trained, we can see that these emotions are an investment, and we can go underneath it quickly and find the desire and just release it. You can just release the desire for the experience. Look at what we're trying to feel. I feel really sad. See that it's a desire to feel sad. In other words, sadness doesn't necessarily have to have a long recovery process. The beliefs in the world like sadness and guilt, like let's just take death, for instance. Oh, it's going to take months. It's going to take years for you to get over so-and-so dying. And then the other storyline is, oh, and if you get over them quickly, you never loved him. All that play within consciousness. And Jesus is going, get over it now. It says, your happiness does not need to, and it's really beautiful. Anya gave a beautiful reflection on that, but it's open to share, no private thoughts, that when her husband passed away, she just made the decision not to be guilty. And it's completely within our power to do that. And in this world, you'll get all the doubt thoughts about it. Just ignore them. We are perfect happiness regardless of the circumstances. The only way the emotion can arise is for our desire for it to arise. Our desire for that experience. And the ego will use that to prove that there's something actually happening. Emotions are part of the mechanism of the expression of the denial of divine nature and support the belief that the world exists. Those hidden emotions. So, and again, I refer back to David's chart. It's really helpful. You can discover this for yourself. Again, Jesus is pointing right to denials. But that, what do you call it? That circle of
the
levels of mind David has, where in the middle is desire. And then beliefs, emotions, beliefs drives emotions. Emotions are what create the perception of others. So Jesus is going ding, 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 all the way down. See the desire for the belief. The belief comes out of the desire for an experience, and we experience it through emotions, perception. Out here we perceive. So as the beliefs fall away, the perception and the desires fall away, then the perception of other falls away. The whole thing collapses. And support the belief that the world exists, thus the attempt to prove there is something happening to a me. See that they are a clue to what you've denied yourself. They're just habitual patterns. And the crying that's happening now is not the crying for now. The crying is the kind of the residual, just a residual pattern. I'm not saying crying for like the release, when you can cry to release, you can cry to hang on to something that's been happening. It's just ask Jesus. That's always the best approach. Ask Jesus, is there a pattern here that I can look at? Is there a pattern of an emotional pattern of keeping this emotion of whatever sadness, of fear, of anger, this desire under it? And see how long it lasts when the desire is burned out. When the desire for it is looked at. They are an intertwined part of the storyline, as there is an addiction to experiencing them as well as suppressing them. Divine nature does not know emotions, thus, so they are created so they can be dispelled. It is the belief that emotions are true and must be experienced or denied for salvation that is an idea arising in the subconscious mind, in the mind of the dreamer. See that these are desired experience. When desires fall away, emotions are no longer experienced. Because there's happiness. Happiness, infinite light know what an emotion is. It doesn't know what that is. It doesn't know what emotions are. To the ego, that sounds horrible. What do you mean? I'm not going to be excited anymore. I'm not going to be, well, whatever those emotions were. The anticipatory emotions, the avoiding emotions, the something's happening to me emotions, they just fall away because there's just happiness. And as he says, it starts, the experience here at least, and maybe others, I never really asked anybody too much about it, but Jesus said there are only two emotions, love and fear. And so you start seeing the fear and under that tension, you know, that play to denial, the denial. So there's only complete relaxation and happiness, and then the denial. So it becomes, you just see it as a, you know, okay, here's a denial coming up. Let's look. I'm the storyline. I'm not my story. Or we are story in the light and honesty of divine being. You know, divine being has spaciousness for all, the diversity in consciousness, what plays. It doesn't judge somebody crying or laughing or, you know, there's not a judgment in it. We just see it for what it is. It's a play on the surface without changing our innermost nature. And then we go inward individually. We're not trying to fix it in somebody else. We're just saying, okay, let me see with you, Jesus, where am I denying perfect, infinite happiness? We thank Jesus every day for showing us, here are the denials. I've denied myself by creating myself as a story. And just see that divine light doesn't have a story. The greatest story ever told is true identity. It doesn't have a story. What would life be like to never have a story again? Ego's, oh my gosh, no movies. No. It just sees that without a story, everything is so full and it's just full and complete. It's not fragmented anymore in the experience of limitation. Perfect innocence in all things. So we thank you, Jesus, for guiding us back to ourselves and for sending Jesus, all these multitude of Jesuses, to remind me who I am. Amen.